Thank you very much. Good evening and a warm welcome to this celebration of the second anniversary of FIUM, Forum for Journalism and Media Vienna, and to the graduation of our first students of the master's program, International Media Innovation Management, in short, IMIM. Bill always says, I am. Choose as you want. I choose IMIM. I think it's easier. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm very happy. I am Daniela, for those of you who don't know me. I'm the director of FIUM, and I have the pleasure to be your host and moderator this evening. For me, and I think for several people in this audience, it really is an occasion to celebrate. Our institution was founded 2 years ago, and I might say these were 2 very successful years. Of course, creating a launchpad for media innovation and putting Vienna on the international map, creating a platform for exchange, is not possible without the dedication and the commitment of many people. So, as you know, my first task, of course, is to say thank you. Thank you to our partner institutions. Thank you to our executive boards and to our advisory boards. Thank you, of course, to our faculty and to our trainers, and thank you to our participants. And founding FIUM as an institution for mid-career training for journalists and media professionals was only possible due to the support by the city of Vienna. Thanks a lot, it wouldn't have been possible without this support. I also want to say thank you for the opportunity to host this celebration here in the Vienna City Hall and in this very nice surrounding. For those of you who are from abroad and are not familiar with the Vienna City Hall, the men here are former mayors of the city of Vienna. However, at the center of the city's efforts to make this possible has always been a woman, Deputy Mayor Renate Brauner, who planned to join us, but unfortunately, due to very important obligations, we had an election on Sunday, can't join us. Thus, our first speaker and speaker on behalf of the city of Vienna will be Sibylle Straubinger, who always supports this project. And she is a member of the Vienna City Council. Please say welcome to Sibylle Straubinger. Sibylle, please come onto the stage. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a pleasure for me to welcome you on behalf of the Deputy Mayor, Renate Brauner. As Daniela already said, we had elections and yes, some developments which made a very tight and busy schedule, and it's not possible for her to be here.
It is now my pleasure to introduce Michael Pilz. Michael Pilz is the president of FIUM's board. Michael, please.
Dear representatives of the city of Vienna, dear students of the IMIM program, dear guests. As president of FIUM, the institution who organizes and takes the responsibility of the IMIM master program, I give you all a cordial welcome to today's celebration event. I understand that the major part of you is more interested in the following keynote speech of Wolfgang Blau, and a minor but very important group of tonight's participants is especially eager for the grant of their diplomas. Nevertheless, I ask you for patience and also attention to the thanks of our organization to those who made it possible, not only to hold tonight's celebration, but also to establish IMIM as a respectable master program and to create FIUM as an innovative provider of necessary advanced training and education of journalists here in Vienna and all in Austria. So also my first and biggest thank goes to the city of Vienna who enabled this project by a generous funding of our budget, granting scholarship for students of the IMIM program and participants of various other programs and courses we offer to the people of the media already in our 3rd year. Without the initial financing by the City Council, this project would never have been realizable. The City of Vienna proved by its decision of its interest in the existence of qualified journalism in the changing media, which we see as a decision of political farsightedness and perspective. My second thank you goes to the DOW, Deutsche Universität für Weiterbildung, our academic partner, and its president, Ms. Dr. Ada Pellert. The partnership with DOW was marked by a way of constructiveness and pragmatics which made it possible to establish IMIM in the shortest thinkable time. The help of DOW gave us the necessary support we needed to find our way through the maze of academic admission and international acceptance we needed. As necessary as the support of the university was also the administration of the program, the Studiengangsleitung, Mr. Andi Kaltenbrunner, who was able to handle this master program in its first edition with great care, big patience, and as we heard, bigger affection for the needs, concerns, and interests of our students. Thank you. IMIM Master Program had a strong support by our scientific board, who is responsible for the content, supervision, and ongoing mentoring of our course. I give our warm gratitude to all members of the scientific board of IMIM and also to the journalistic board of FIUM, which assists and supports the Viennese-based advanced studies for journalists and media workers. You are all invited to pick up the names of all these very interesting and interested people being members of our boards on the website of FIUM on FIUM.at. I hope the board members will stay in their position, as also in the next years we cannot offer them anything else than thank you on occasions like this. For the students of the master program, it was not only important having the financial support of the City of Vienna, but also economic support by others, for example, the employers or other institutions giving scholarships and grants. As an example, let me especially mention the Wiener Zeitung, the oldest daily newspaper of the world, which we are very proud to have here in Vienna. Thank you for your support, and we hope it will go on, hopefully also in the future. Last but not least, I would like to personally thank all the members of our team at FIUM. Especially mention this Daniela Kraus, our CEO, who was not only one of those people who supported the idea of an institution for media and journalist training here in Vienna, but is a person who is able to realize an idea from the blank paper to a respectable institution. Without her effectiveness and consequence, FIUM would not be where it is now and today. FIUM was founded with the support of the City of Vienna to establish an institution which makes the city more visible in the field of media production, media training, and meeting the new tasks media are facing in the environment of the digitization. FIUM and the IMIM Master Program should bring the idea of Vienna as a city of not only the oldest newspaper of the world, but also as a marketplace for new, exciting, and agitating developments in the fields of journalism and media production to Europe and to the world. We organize education and advanced training by bringing top trainers from all over the world to Vienna. And we have no lesser goal than to bring our ideas of the media in the 21st century to the participants of our courses, programs, and activities here in Vienna and all over the world and in Europe. The students of our master program, the last one which ends today and the new which starts tonight, come from Austria, from European countries, especially the CEE countries, but also from Asia, Africa, and America. For those who are more interested in the local Austrian politics, let me add a final note. The new government in Austria will also have to reorganize the public media funding. As we are proud of the performance we made in the last years, we ask you for your support in this discussion. The City of Vienna is not able to finance our project all alone for an indefinite future. From our point of view, it would also be an obligation of the federal government to support not only single media titles or existing training institutions just out of habit, but also those institutions which do their best to enable and assist modern journalism in changing times. We thank you all for your interest you bring to our institution, and we hope to have you as partners of FIUM in the next years, as students, as participants of our courses, as supporters, or simply as friends. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me add one more thank you, which I consider very important, and that is to say thank you to the team, in particular to Patricia Käfer, who is at the heart of IMIM, to Eva Kobalt from FIUM, and to Gunther Müller, who helped to organize more than 60 courses, public events, and trainings within these 2 years. More than 1,000 participants have been visiting our events, trainings, and courses in our programs. In the shaping of our study program, we lay big emphasis on 2 basic principles. The first one is anticipating and maybe co-creating developments in the world of media. And the second one is very carefully choosing faculty and speakers. In accordance with both of these principles, I'm very pleased to welcome this evening's keynote speaker, who has often been a trendsetter in journalism. He was working in California for 8 years, then already covering media and technology industries. In 2008, he became editor-in-chief of Zeit Online in Germany, and during the next 5 years, when he has led Zeit Online, its unique visits rose by more than 400%, and Zeit Online's annual revenue grew by more than 280%. Zeit Online has won Germany's most important awards for online journalism and was the first German newsroom to win the American ONA Online Journalism Award for its data journalism. In 2011, our keynote speaker has been awarded as Germany's Chief Editor of the Year. Since this year, I might say so, he dwells in the heaven of media innovation. He joined The Guardian in April as a director of digital strategy. He is at The Guardian a member of the chief editor's team, as well as of The Guardian's executive committee. I cannot imagine a more pertinent speaker on the topic next on our program. Media transformation, what your future CEO needs to know. Please welcome the Director of Digital Strategy at The Guardian, Wolfgang Blau. Let me add, and thank you in particular, Wolfgang. Wolfgang has a sore throat and a fever, so I'm very happy that you're here instead of being sick, and we are really looking forward to your speech.
Much more attractive than being at home in bed, so thank you very much for this very kind welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. And if I, in between, suddenly smile at you with an empty glare, you know why, and just clap your hand and I'll keep going. So good to see you all. It's great to see so many colleagues, and yes, Vienna's media industry might not be as big as New York, but some of the world's best newsrooms are in this city, and I think you should be very proud of that. I personally have learned a lot. I don't want to mention brands now, but I have learned a lot from colleagues who are working here in Vienna. Ladies and gentlemen, dear graduates of the Executive Master's Program for International Media Innovation Management, when you manage a media company in this decade of the 2010s, whether it's a startup or a well-established brand, there is one word you keep hearing so often you might not even notice it anymore: revolution. The internet revolution, the mobile revolution, the social media revolution. And to put all of those into historic context, we often refer to the invention of the printing press by Gutenberg, and guess what we call it? Of course, the printing revolution. Culturally, the term revolution has a much more positive echo and connotation in the United States than it has here in Europe, and that's something to keep in mind. Today's United States of America have been born out of a successful revolution, militarily very unlikely, but successful against the odds, while so many attempted European revolutions, especially in the 1800s, were tragically unsuccessful and made life only worse for our ancestors. Revolution usually meant utter defeat. And not only does the term revolution carry a slightly more fearful connotation here in Europe than it does in the US, it is also obvious that the main drivers and economic beneficiaries of this revolution are not based in Europe, but mostly in the United States. Despite these cultural as well as economic reasons to be skeptical towards, or not even wanting to call it a revolution, it should be undeniable by now that we are in the midst of a societal and economic shift that shares many of the characteristics of other historically well-documented revolutions. We are witnessing a mass change of behavior and societal norms, enabled or at least accelerated by the internet. It doesn't really matter which one. We are noticing a rapid redistribution of societal influence and political power, and an undeniable redistribution of revenue and wealth. And you might have noticed there's another interesting phenomenon that's typical also for other historically well-documented revolutions, which is that a part of the elite, in our case professional elites, journalism, a part of the elite has already lost belief in itself, yet is so invested in its old professional self-perception and role models that it would actually rather go down and perish and disappear than change its practices or renew its relationship to its newly empowered audience. Typical for a revolution. And just like the internet itself or any new technology, nothing of this redistribution of power is inherently good or bad. It just is. And all the choice that is left is to discuss whether the positive or the negative effects of this revolution might be predominant, and whether you, with your organization or institution, might be in a position to not stop, of course, but maybe influence elements of this massive societal change. And as with every revolution, it's also safe to assume, and you can already observe it, that there are phases of backlash, phases of restoration, phases of very irrational behavior. You can see that, for instance, in an overzealous drive of copyright reform, or to use a local example, you can also look at the attempts of Austrian publishers to keep the public broadcaster completely from using social media. Logical arguments behind it, but of course from a distant, very irrational, and only to be understood in this bigger context of fear, understandable fear. And while we are going through this reorganization of our societies, our economies, our value systems, to some extent even our family relations as much as our foreign relations, it is becoming more likely than unlikely that many of the media institutions you are working for today will not exist anymore in 10 years. So, here you are, just having graduated from one of the world's most interesting international master's programs for media managers. Did you make the wrong career decision? I really don't think so. Journalism will prevail. Whether it will be practiced by full-time journalists or volunteers, whether it is being orchestrated in a commercial or in a non-commercial fashion, or very likely in a combination of the two, there will always be a need for journalistic institutions and for smart, knowledgeable managers who help organize and run such institutions. Even an institution like Wikipedia, whose tremendous contributions to journalism and informed societies should be undeniable by now, employs full-time managers at its Wikimedia foundations. And don't think any of the more recent entries into the media business, from Twitter to Huffington Post, BuzzFeed, Upworthy, Newsy, Gawker, Circa, and whatever their names are, don't think that any of them were not struggling with the same organizational issues each and every human organization is struggling with at some point in its life cycle, such as bureaucracy, calcification, recruitment challenges, internal rivalries, a slowdown in innovation. The style of media leadership is changing, but the need for leaders will not go away. Will there be as many journalistic institutions in 10 years from now as there are today? Probably not. Will the newly formed or reformed old institutions employ as many professional journalists, full-time and fully paid, developers and salespeople as today's media institutions? At this point, very unlikely. But there is a paradox. While we are being faced with the tragedy, the human and the professional tragedy of so many able journalists losing their jobs and incomes in the last decade and even more so in the decade to come, we are also witnessing a dramatic shortage of informed leadership in journalistic institutions, and this is hopefully where you will come into play. In your training during these last 2 years, you have been visiting and been in touch with media institutions around the world, companies that are rightfully proud of their journalistic achievements. Yet the leaders of so many of these companies are faced with the challenge that they began their careers and then rose through the ranks during times when the revenue and profitability of media companies were extremely high in many cases, and during which the media business perceived itself as mature. When an industry perceives itself as mature, something very interesting happens. The system optimizers are the ones who rise to the top. Those who are best at optimizing the already proven methods of business qualify themselves for promotions. Those able managers who can launch, for instance, brand extensions without damaging core business, or produce the same product at an even better margin. And in a culture of system optimizers, the term innovation is usually being used to describe changes that are only incremental, such as introducing color print on a newspaper front, or getting all of your newsroom employees finally set up with their own Twitter accounts, which is helpful, but nowhere near being innovative. When faced with the prospect of having to focus on far fewer products of which all have similar margins, or when faced with having to work with only half the newsroom they once had, the CEO, the chief editor, or senior manager who perceived her or himself as a good system optimizer tends to get paralyzed and responds with depression or anger or a mixture of both. Anger at the world, at the internet, or even at their own readers. And you can't blame them for it, as it is so incredibly difficult to change a mindset and to learn on the go when everything around you is in flux and when it seems that there is so much to lose and fairly little to win. Which takes us back to our initial question: how do you prepare yourself for leading journalistic institutions during a revolution? And can you prepare at all? Clay Shirky, one of the, I think, most insightful thinkers about the societal effects of the internet, once wrote these words, quote, "When someone demands to know how we are going to replace newspapers, they are really demanding to be told that we are not living through a revolution. They are demanding to be told that old systems won't break before new systems are in place. They are demanding to be told that ancient social bargains aren't in peril, that core institutions will be spared, that new methods of spreading information will improve previous practice rather than upending it. They are demanding to be lied to. There are fewer and fewer people who can convincingly tell such a lie." End of quote. Now, if you listen carefully, you will have noticed that Shirky does assume that eventually, like after all revolutions in the past, a new order, new systems will emerge. He only emphasizes that it is the nature of revolutions that old systems break long before new systems are in place. So there is hope, right? The old institutions of the media industry only have to hang in there long enough for the new order, the new business models and systems to emerge, and then adapt and keep going, right? I had a conversation with Richard Gingras last week. Richard Gingras is one of the true digital media pioneers in the United States. Amongst his many, many achievements is the introduction of teletext in the US, the first digital on-demand media. He was the CEO of Salon.com, the first online-only magazine, and currently he is the senior director of Google News, which operates, as you know, in 45 languages. I asked Richard Gingras what he thought of Clay Shirky's inherent assumption that while we are in some kind of a revolution, it's only a question of time for the storms of change to quieten down and a new order to emerge. Now, you need to know that Richard has a bit of a grandfatherly appearance. He has a big white beard, very warm eyes, and I noticed that he looked at me, sizing me up whether I would be willing to hear his response. And then he said with a soft voice, "What if this revolution won't end? What if it just keeps going? What if the turmoil is permanent?" As a journalist, of course, I immediately rejected his counter-question and thought to myself, yeah, sure, right. You're a director of Google News. Easy to say for you. Isn't Google one of the few beneficiaries of the digital shift? permanent turmoil would work in your interest. But if you try to look at the internet through the eyes of Google, you will notice that Google might already have its zenith behind itself. 10 years after the introduction of search marketing, it is still completely dependent on the revenue of this initial business model. Google did not anticipate social, it did not anticipate the identity business, and it might just as well perceive itself as being at risk and being slightly overwhelmed as well. So I said, how can that be, Richard? Is there any historic precedent for a permanent revolution? He didn't want to engage with me in historic comparisons. He simply asked back again. He said, do you see any signs of this revolution slowing down? No, of course not. I don't. So he replied, yes, new systems, new orders might emerge one day, but this rapid change, this constant disruption and social prototyping and constant testing of new potentially disruptive business models that the internet enables at very low cost, all of that seems to be a permanent feature of this new era. Permanent revolution. Coming back to your graduation today and your wonderful new master's degrees. Not only are we in the midst of a revolution, but have entered an era of dramatically accelerated and possibly permanent change. And I know all of you are not afraid of change, but how do you prepare yourself for that? How do you lead media institutions, or how do you support the leaders of your institutions in an era of accelerated permanent change? If I would now embark on trying to give you a set of leadership rules, I would of course contradict everything I've been trying to express so far. But I think there are a few loosely joined pieces of experience that are still worth sharing with you. From A as in attitude to N as in newsroom, and don't worry, as much as I like BuzzFeed, I won't list every letter of the alphabet between these two. A as in attitude. Your own attitude towards the net can get in the way of your decision making, strategically, business-wise, if you are not conscious of your attitude towards the net. As a platform for personal expression and social collaboration, the internet amplifies both the good and the ugly, the strengths and the weaknesses of humans and of humanity. And so it is worth taking time, it really is worth taking a quiet moment with yourself and ask yourself whether you personally regard humanity as inherently weak, selfish, and in need of being protected from itself, an old theme of conservative journalism, or whether you see humanity as inherently good and striving for evolution and justice. Of course, the truth is somewhere in between those two, but your own bend towards one or the other will influence whether you treat the net primarily as a threat to society that should be controlled, or as a chance for society that should be nurtured. C as in corporate culture, that's an easy one. Do not conform to it. Right? Easy. Easy said, could almost be a slogan for some sports shoe manufacturer. It's very difficult to not conform to culture. Culture is really good at making you conform to it. In the old world of matured media business models, conforming to what you saw around you and then finding the cracks and openings for your ideas to further optimize these matured businesses was how you gained visibility and then rose through the ranks. In today's age of turmoil, conforming and just going with the flow might still make you very popular, might even give you a few years of a good career, but it would make you blind to the bigger opportunities and possibly betray the future of journalism in your country. The ethics of journalism, a journalist's duty to accuracy, courage, fairness, and transparency will prevail. Most everything else, though, from the old media world appears to be in the process of breaking. Do not conform to it. Be respectful of earlier achievements and of those who have been contributing to your institution long before you joined it, but never ever allow for these earlier achievements and contributions to oblige you to not speak up. In fact, being willing to risk your job might be the only way there is of getting anything done or changed in today's media environment. Yet also don't underestimate the importance and potential of corporate cultures. Investing in changing your corporate and especially your editorial culture is often being neglected and might be frowned upon by your board. After all, culture change is difficult to measure. It's just a soft goal. How do you quantify it? How do you set targets? But if you compare investments into, let's say, investments into your digital user interface, your design, compare that with investments into your algorithmic intelligence, for instance, for good content targeting, and thirdly, with an investment into culture change. Investments into design are the easiest to copy by your competitors. There's the least competitive advantage in it. Investing into your algorithmic intelligence, good personalization algorithms, more difficult to copy but can be re-engineered as well. While your investment into culture change is very difficult to understand from the outside. They first have to steal a few of your people for that. They have to do lots of interviews. Then they have to understand how that could be adapted to their own culture. And then it takes at least a year for any dramatic culture change to take place. And what I mean with culture change is very practical. It can, for instance, mean that you train and incentivize your editors to really become responsive and engaged in social media, not just use social media for link dumping, that they engage in your comment threads reliably. Or it can mean that data journalism isn't just becoming one more island in the portfolio of digital practices, but becomes an integral part of every approach to every major story. And that differentiates you oftentimes more than a unique design. D as in data. If you enter a new company, of course it's important to figure out where the editorial leadership is and the commercial leadership, but I would also look early on for who owns the data, who owns the traffic data and the financial data. In a digital company, the person who owns that data usually frames and hence owns the narrative of the whole company without possibly ever being seen personally. So there's something else. The person that owns the data also knows the most about the company, because in these days, every project, every editorial or commercial proposal typically first starts with a request for data to falsify or verify your thesis before you then float the idea or your proposal. So this person is really important, and I think it is crucial that this person either reports directly as a chief intelligence officer to the CEO or to the chief editor or both, but is not hidden somewhere deeper in your organizational chart. The other point I would like to make is that you should do everything you can that all of your employees don't get as little data as absolutely necessary, but as much data as at all possible. And of course, by doing that, you run the risk of flooding your employees with data, so there needs to be training and good tools, but software cost is not really an issue anymore. And also you run the risk of overexposing yourself and making it a bit too easy for your competitors to observe you. But in the end, I think that's a good risk to take. It also can be quite unpleasant to be proven wrong by your own employees, by them using large sets of data from your company. But wouldn't you rather be proven wrong by your own employees than by your competitors or by your clients? Share your data. H as in herd mentality. If you are working for a print publisher, you cannot overestimate the tendency of this industry to mimic each other's products and behaviors and tactics to the point of being interchangeable. In the old world, this behavior was justified, as each paper had the pretty much same 4 sources of revenue: subscription revenue, copy sales, display ads, and classified ads, and then also went through the same distribution channels to reach similar sets of readers. Today, this behavior is not only pointless, but also risky, as it sets benchmarks that are too low. Example, the typical traffic ranking of news sites are mostly useless because they only list the news sites of other traditional brands and not the many other competitors like HuffPost, BuzzFeed, whatever country you're in, to whom your readers go as well on their daily journeys. It also doesn't make sense to count how many of your journalists are actively using Twitter and then to compare these numbers with a competing newsroom, as it is very popular to do in several countries. Because typically and unfortunately, your local movie theater, your preferred airline, your national railway company, your health insurance are all more responsive on Twitter than traditional newsrooms are. And so comparing yourself with another newsroom sets a benchmark that is too low. I as in innovation. I know that your master's degree carries the words innovation management, but personally, I'm having doubts about the extent to which true innovation can be managed, and I know you have been discussing this question as well. As a media executive, it is a good starting point to assume that despite all the pro-innovation rhetoric in media companies, innovation is only welcome as long as it is not truly innovative. True innovation of products or processes often renders earlier products, processes, and often whole teams obsolete. And that is not something that established organizations are inherently good at. This is very risky because it enforces a brutal reset of priorities. So for a media company to be creative or maybe even innovative, it seems to help tremendously to do two things as an executive, as a leader. You have to always strive for the right balance between nurturing cross-departmental collaboration, such as between your developers and your editors, while also making sure that there is a clearly understood and logical structure of teams, reporting lines, and personal mandates for making decisions. If you only do what is fashionable, which is nurturing cross-departmental collaboration, but do not care about also having a stringent team structure and clearly defined mandates for prioritization and decision-making, you will end up with plenty of ideas, but mostly mediocre ideas, and you will have difficulties with executing and realizing these ideas. Because all the known mantras of innovation, such as fail fast early and fail often, or fail harder, move fast and break stuff, still require that there is a team that is able to set priorities in the first place to even know what to fail with. One of Steve Jobs' greatest strengths was to decide which ideas and projects never to pursue in the first place. If, on the other hand, you're mostly focusing on setting up a very clean team structure with a minimum of double reporting lines, clearly defined mandates for decision-making, but don't make sure that these different teams and individual employees can easily and frequently collaborate with each other without having to ask anyone for permission first, you will end up with an organization that is very efficient, very good at what it knows already, but is not very creative, neither inspired. Innovation demands this permanent search from you for the right balance between free-flowing cross-pollination and organizational discipline. And whenever someone lauds their flat hierarchies to you, take a closer look. Chances are the term flat hierarchy, as fashionable as it is being used to veil the fact that there's only one person in the center that calls all the shots and usually causes enormous delay. And the inflationary use of the word innovation has also overshadowed something else that is not as fashionable as innovation, which is the enormous potential that does lie in simple optimization and simple care for your existing products. The information architecture of most news sites is dysfunctional and has never worked. Most news apps are loaded with bugs. Most e-commerce processes on media sites are broken or not competitive, which is the same as being broken. So it is a rare qualification that is being demanded from you, but as a modern-day media manager, you must be both the innovator and the thorough but slightly boring janitor of your products. N as in newsroom. Chief editors around the world have a tendency to complain and commiserate about how resistant their newsrooms are towards any kind of change or reform. We shouldn't forget, though, how as readers and as citizens, we all hope for newsrooms that do not buckle under pressure and that do resist any attempt to change them, whether it comes from the inside or outside. The pride and identity of some of the best newsrooms in the world is built on that very idea of not caving in to political pressure or commercial interest. And now this is not meant as an excuse for newsrooms not to embrace reform, which is, of course, terribly needed. But it must be kept in mind when approaching newsrooms with the usual tool set and sometimes a bit cheap-sounding rhetoric of change management. Most newsrooms are simply too smart for that. In addition, you're dealing with journalists. Many of us chose this profession because we feel a duty to hold power to account, and that means any power, also the power of our own employers. Because as you know, the best journalists are those that are more loyal to their readers than to their employer. And to make matters worse, once you have covered politics for a few years, as a journalist, you have learned from the best manipulators of public opinion your country had to offer. So it shouldn't come as a surprise or be seen as an anomaly that newsrooms are especially good at defending their organizational and editorial status quo, because this resistance often is the very idea on which a newsroom once has been built upon. Most of you in this room here chose this master's, this program for, I think, a whole variety of reasons. And I'm curious to hear more from you later tonight. But I would assume you did so because you realized that your company didn't have all the answers it needed to respond to this crisis, or you wanted to simply challenge yourself, which is wonderful, or on a meta level you also realized how crucial it will be for your country that there will be a foundation for accountability journalism to exist. And I think in this lifelong quest of yours, because it will take you decades, your journalists and your developers can be your greatest allies if you manage to do 4 things. Be very honest about your organization's economic situation, even at the risk of your competitors ridiculing you while they have the same or worse problems and are trying to hide them. Let them feel safe. Be very clear about the differences between a corporation and a democracy. This is something that often confuses journalists. We are holding politicians to account and watch out for our democracies, yet we work in organizations that might have a democratic culture, but in the end are privately owned corporations and not publicly owned and run democracies. That is confusing. The temptation is high for journalistic leadership to then simulate democracy and somewhat hide their power. But you will gain far more loyalty and trust if you are very clear about everyone having a voice in your corporation and being heard, but not everyone having a vote on everything. Also, respect that most of your developers are as idealistic as your journalists. The theme of the nerdy developer that has been propagated in movies and literature for so long can blind us now to the fact that some of the same people who in the past would have chosen a journalistic career to contribute to the future of democracy, today are choosing careers as developers and data scientists. The idealism, the general education of your developers in the arts, languages, philosophy, or history is often as high and higher than the education of your journalists. Infusing your developers team with journalists and your editorial team with developers is your best bet at positioning your company for a future that is, whether you like it or not dominated by publishing companies, but almost defined by technology companies. And lastly, be honest about your leadership. Take the blame for your failures, as difficult as that is, but generously share the glory of your successes. It is not always easy, but your teams will notice it, whether they publicly acknowledge it or not. They're journalists. Remember, they're not stupid. I wish you the very best, and above all, I wish you the courage to be very bold. Good luck to you all, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Wolfgang. Thank you very much. Thank you, Wolfgang, for your inspiring speech. I want to pick up one point. Keep believing in yourself. I think this is an evening to focus on this aspect very much too. And I think the time has come to award the IMIM Diplomas to our first alumni. I would like to hand over to 2 people who have been instrumental in making this study program such a success, Ada Pellet and Andy Kaltenbrunner. Please come onto the stage. Professor Dr. Ada Pellet is president of DUW, and Andy Kaltenbrunner is the program director. Thank you.
So I'll take over the microphone. It's a wonderful moment. It's a pleasure, and I have to confess I'm a bit proud. 2 years ago, we've been meeting many colleagues here in the room to start with that program. Some more years ago, Wolfgang and others have been thinking about how to bring an interesting program to Vienna, to other places in the world out there, to discuss the topic of media innovation so well presented by Wolfgang Blauer today. And well, we thought maybe it could work out, and maybe many friends, colleagues, experts out there in the world would help us. And they did, actually. So we are here now with the first group of students to be graduated. There will be coming some more. They did a wonderful job, one has to say, in these 2 years. as it was an executive program, as you remember. Most of them, all of them, had professional obligations, a lot of work to do, families waiting at home. Sometimes I like to see Daniela's young boy sleeping there. He was rather on Skype with his mother very often when she was in the US, in Spain, in Berlin, in Vienna, then in her home country, Malta, and studying there. So families that were patient gave them the chance to work and to elaborate their career and the innovation plans. And we are grateful, and I can't name them all, who helped us and who promised in the very beginning, as Wolfgang did and others years ago, okay, we'll be there, that's a good idea. And they have been there, they have been helping, lecturing, guest lecturing, doing keynote speeches for the graduates and the new ones to be welcomed. And one very important partner, of course, was the University of Berlin. Inside the network, we discussed who would be the ones who would understand that very special type of program, which is not every day's academic program as we know it, the typical master from, well, we have it here and there, and we hoped to have something special. And thanks, Ada, and hand over to you before we are graduating. Thanks for that support, and yeah, it's your turn.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I think it was a great pleasure and honor to host this program, and I think we have to throw a light to the people and students who are in the center of tonight. Why do you do a 2 years executive master's program? So I'm sure your partners and friends very often ask you this question, and maybe your son will ask it in some years. And I think if I observe it, it's of course about personal, professional development. You invest in your personal development, so it's about the improvement of the individual. But there's a second aspect, and I think Wolfgang Blau pointed already at that. You all are busy in your professional life. Yeah, you are still in your company working while you are studying. So this is also about improving organizations. It's improving and changing the organizational culture. So I think this is an important second aspect. And there's a third one. I think the most important with IMIM, or IMIM, sounds funny as well. This is creating an international, intercultural network. So I think this is something about changing the sector, not you as a person only and your employer or organization, but it's also contributing to the change within a sector. And I think what I observed is the establishment of this international, intercultural network. This is the really inspiring thing about IMIM. And this has something to do establishing a network amongst you, the students and now alumni, but also with the professors and lecturers, as Wolfgang Blau, for instance. And at the end, it's something like the modern version of a very, very old European university idea. In German, it's called the Gemeinschaft of Lehrende and Lernende. But that's exactly what the profession needs. And I'm very proud to see the first seed of this movement. And now having the second cohort, I think it's growing. But I would think the most important is that you really nourish that network that you started to establish. Because in the end, change will only take place if there are people trusting each other, not only yourself, but also your companions and the others. And so I think in a way we celebrate your personal achievements tonight, but also your achievements as root, movement, and seed of a network. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Well, another spotlight on the graduates. No need to give too many details about the program. I think the work they have done speaks for the program and speaks for themselves, and so I will call them one after the other, give some information, and they might give some information on what the work done especially. So it's the first group, the first 6 who did it in minimum time, which really was tough, as they will be able to tell you, maybe with a glass out there then even more open. And so I'm happy to call in alphabetical order our new Masters of International Media Innovation Management. And as the alphabet goes, the first one on the list will be Daniela Blagojevic from Malta. Daniela is working in the media board, so she's a multiplicator of what we are doing. She's giving funding to new ideas, to media innovation, to new creative industries project in Malta. And the thesis she's been working on, to give you an idea what kind of work was at the end. The title is, so here, that's the point where I have to use the paper then always, it's the Interactive Journeys, a study on web documentary innovation, practices and processes, which was a work about quite new formats, web documentations as produced in Arte or the ZDF, something quite new, something quite interesting, and in many ways an innovation, an interesting innovation. So the question is, I mean, what is needed? What did you see there? What is needed to support that kind of media innovation? What is there one key finding about what media innovation needs?
Well, to sum it up in one is a bit tough, but I'd say that it's changing in a way that we need a new language, a common language between traditionally different media industries, which would be journalism, games, and film, to find that common language. And increasingly producers, as the producers interviewed for the work, need to take on the role of makers, not just people who are looking for, not just wheeler dealers, but really people who can work with mixed teams.
Okay. So, well, I hope you've had a lot of learnings throughout these 2 difficult years, but is there one key learning, one thing you would take back to Malta now? Well, we stay in contact, we'll find out together also, but one key learning you would say that was the most important for me in that master's program?
I mean, it's one of the reasons for doing the program, because Wolfgang Blau was asking as well, is to look outwardly. And especially with an island economy and with a small economy, I think for us it's even more important to connect and to look outwardly. So the best practices seen throughout these 2 years, I think it's that we take back, the looking outwardly and connecting. And also that we tend to say, you know, this happens because we're Malta and because it's so small and tiny. But you realize that those challenges are encountered abroad as well. So yeah, it's a good discovery.
So wonderful. So please give a big hand, and other please the diploma for Daniela. You stay with us. You stay with us. Thank you. Well, as the alphabet goes, there's another B on the list. We're coming to Austria. Some in the room might know the colleague. I'm calling Dieter Bornemann to receive his graduation. Dieter Bornemann, many of you might know as a TV journalist. Also maybe some know as in his position as the speaker of the ORF journalists. And he did a very interesting piece, I would say. Austrians in the room would understand why interesting, because it's a topic that is very important for the future also of the public broadcaster. So the topic, the official thesis title, Dieter, is Journalists' Views on Multimedia Work, the Future of Implementation of a Multimedia Newsroom at the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation. So one of the ideas of IMIM is, of course, that the thesis, the project, with all the theory behind, which isn't so easy to find very often, is then related to work and should help improve the working situation, find new ways in companies also in this case also mention Professor Jose Garcia Aviles, he's in the room tonight also, who helped you developing your thesis, one of the experts of multimedia newsrooms and research on that. So your work showed us it's difficult to embrace all that innovation. Wolfgang Blau said that, especially for journalists in the newsroom. What has to be done, according to what you learned, that innovation comes to the newsroom, maybe?
So I find out there's the human factor and there is the technical factor. On the technical side, it's very important to have one piece of software for all different media platforms, otherwise it won't function. And you have to sit in one common room. If you're divided in different locations as journalists, you won't work together. And on the human side, we just heard it from Wolfgang Blau in his speech, journalists are very resistant to any change process. And you have to cope with that as a media manager. You have to convince the journalist why a change process is good for them. Even if you convince them, they won't follow you anyway.
Okay. So, an applause for Dieter Bornemann, and of course, I'm sure his thesis will be interesting for many in the room to be read. Please, Dieter.
Danke.
Ja. Next on our list, we make not from A to N, but a big jump to the O, because the others are more on the end of the alphabet. Next on the list is Andreea Ofiteru. Andreea is a journalist from Gandul, which is an online media, one of the biggest websites in Romania, and coming originally from newspaper and print, working online now as an expert in education with her news coverage, working on that, supervised, among others, by Bill Mitchell, our colleague from Poynter Institute, who is here with us tonight. Thanks to Poynter for all the help, and thanks, Bill, for all the work with our students. And the title of her thesis is Quality Journalism and High Traffic in Romanian Online. And the idea was, well, to see what drives traffic, and is there some quality behind? After your research, what do you think makes quality, what drives quality, and what can guarantee at least quality standards in online journalism as you practice it?
I think that the quality is made by journalists, and you have to convince journalists that the quality is more important than traffic, and to convince them not to run only for traffic and only for click, but to respect their work.
Mm-hmm. So, but in Romania, as we know, the economic background, that's always an important thing for the newsroom, for journalism, for media. The economic background in Romania is tough. So is there a chance for that kind of quality development, especially in countries right now in Central Eastern Europe? We know that the situation might be difficult.
I think that the best way to improve the quality in online is to work in training for training the managers, and in the same time to invest more in online, because the online is not so seen so good in good in Romania. So the best way is to attract more sponsorship for online.
Okay. So, thank you, Andreea. Please take your graduation diploma from the president of the university. So, next on the list, we make a jump to Serbia. Welcome, Nevena Raumovic, who did a wonderful thesis. I have to point that out. Who did a real wonderful thesis, be it in categories of academia or in categories of practical research in the field on exploring modalities of online user participation in Serbia. From your study, I learned, Nevena, that there's all large online platforms in Serbia to integrate the user-generated content is impossible. Is it impossible then is it possible that it has also strong impact on democracy and on democratic? Is there democratic challenges in integrating the user and that kind of interactivity, which was one of our core topics, of course, in the changing media landscape?
It may be a bit early to say something like that, because to make an assessment, because user-generated content is still in its infancy in Serbia, but we are seeing very positive examples that are showing that that newsrooms are actually very interested in user input, input that can lead to newsworthy material, to production of news and stories, and also interested in their feedback. In that sense, and through various other examples, we can see that newsrooms tend to treat users as citizens rather than as merely consumers. Unlike in some other countries, the main places where user-generated content needs to be found is curiously not in entertainment and light soft content in Serbia so far.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Thank you for your wonderful work. The applause also goes to Klaus Meyer as the supervisor, our colleague and to myself. Yeah, and to Jose Garcia, the supervisor. And, well, please take the... Thank you. So, once again we come to Romania. Next on the list of the graduates is Daniela Secarea. Daniela is working as a strategic worker in media in one of the largest companies, or the largest media company in Romania. And Daniel did something very special. So he was interested on how internal communication works in media companies, which is, of course, an important topic. He, by this, was supervised by Claudia Janssen from Berlin University, who is not here with us tonight, and Matthias Kammersin, many of you might know as the Austrian colleague in the board. And the official title of the thesis then was, where do I have it? Building on Company Culture, How Can Internal Publications Make a Difference on Company Publishing Culture? So you worked on that and you found out that in some way, in one or the other way, media companies seem not to be so different from other companies when it comes to communication. So is there anything special when there's a merger, new companies coming together, as in your case in Romania, building the largest company there? So is there maybe some advice for the Austrians and Germans and other countries you can give from your observations, what to do to improve company culture we've been talking about, and communication culture and communication media?
I would say that, especially in the context of organizational integration, it is necessary to communicate timely. That is, to start communicating the change even before it takes place, and then to allow interactivity and as much feedback as possible from all the stakeholders involved in the life of this particular organization.
Okay, so thank you for that advice, and please take the final diploma, the graduation diploma. Yeah. Well, and last but not least, I'm calling another Austrian colleague. He's almost sort of a host in here. He knows the room better than most in here. So, because Paul Weis, please, Paul, join me, is the speaker of the mayor of the city of Vienna. So, he should know the city hall better than we do. Paul, in this case, not to make the same mistake again, was supervised by our colleague Professor Klaus Meyer from the University of Eichstätt, who helped him to develop something that could be important from especially the Austrians here in the room. The idea was to see what, and this is the title, see media convergence in the public sector, the case of the media domain of the city of Vienna. And the idea, I mean, if I'm allowed to say it simply, in a simple form, is how does the public sector serve with all the different channels, all the new possibilities we have, the citizen in its communication, which of course is your work. So what were your key findings in that category?
The framework conditions are completely different compared to media organizations. You've got a very tight legal framework, you've got a very tight formal structure, very tense formal structure, and you have to deal with a topic which is hardly known in journalism, it's decentralization. You've got a lot of different people delivering content, producing content, and it's done in different offices, in different places, and the problem is like to get all together to communicate with one voice to the public.
Okay, so well, as being in the City Hall of Vienna, we hope this will happen soon and better than ever before, maybe with the help of your thesis. So that's actually the idea to work that. So please take the diploma and welcome. So up to you. I mean, I would ask all the new graduates, all the new masters of international media innovation management to come forward for a first photo of the graduates, and then I'll hand over to Daniela. Thank you for your patience. Hope the thesis, the ideas, the topics chosen, the short explanations for a long time of work gave you an impression of what broad area, what wide spread ideas were integrated in the first research projects of our graduates. So thank you for your interest, and please give them all together one final big hand.
Congratulations. Thank you, thank you. And now I want to ask the new students, 15 students from 7 countries, please come onto the stage so everybody knows you. And we have a very good
photo, please.
For a photo, and for joining, and so to facilitate networking. Come ahead. The names of the students you will find in the folder that is on your seat in the IMIM folder.
Want to make a picture of them all.
That's a real challenge.
So we need a little bit of space to do this picture. So.
Okay. Applause, applause. Photos, pictures. We wish you an inspiring time and lots of success and, of course, fun too. And now I want to ask you, I thank you for your attention, and I want to ask you to join us for drinks and some snacks and for a chat. Sorry. Sorry, Dieter.
Dieter told us he wanted to say something.
Dieter, sorry.
We journalists, come on.
Or the enthusiasm. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
You have your iPad with you? No. I'll read it voice more. Another one. Students are always the last ones.
Okay, so Andy asked us to do the speech and then forgot, and knowing full well that I barely make it to reach the table, but okay. Yeah. So, as the tradition goes, this is the student speech.
It was not voluntarily, at least not total, because Andy asked us before we were given our final gradings. So there was no chance to say no for us. You can tell that we studied an innovation management program. That's why we use an iPad. instead of a simple white sheet of paper.
So this master's program took us to Vienna, to Berlin, to Elche, to Madrid, to Florida and St. Petersburg. And today marks our final stop. But what we've discussed is really that the journey is more beautiful and more interesting than the actual arrival. So.
It is time for us to say thank you to some people who made this journey so special for us.
To our guides, Andy and Patricia, to the IMIM faculty members, Klaus, Jose, Bill, and Matthias, you carefully planned our route and had the audacity to find a path where academia and practice meet, even when bridges between the two, academia and practice, are often unsteady. And to the city of Vienna, to FIUM, to the Berlin University for Professional Studies, your support has ensured an entry ticket and a secured place for each of us.
A big thank you goes to all our family and friends, to those who knowingly or unknowingly helped us along the way.
In truth, we compare ourselves to hitchhikers. We owe our safe arrival to those who patiently and unconditionally drove us along.
To the first IMIM generation, our fellow students here, you've been great travel companions. Each of one has encountered different hurdles on their way, even unexpected diversions in our directions.
In the end, we were all keen to find a place, a sense of belonging, somewhere where we can share and connect with people who share a passion for media.
And we would like to add a sorry to everybody who had to suffer our bad moods during the writing period of our thesis. Thank you for your support. And many thanks to Google. We couldn't do it without your help. We were the guinea pigs, but now we are the masters. And we are officially the elderly and wise and entitled to give some advice to the next group of students. We prepared 10 useful tips for the next 2 years.
So don't worry too much about where the program is going to take you, but rather concentrate more on the meaningful connections you make on the way.
Number 2, put down your smartphones or tablet computers from time to time. Stop tweeting, checking Facebook, Foursquare, or whatever. Real life is just here and not in your technical device. But do not forget to book a data plan for your meetings in different countries.
Be prepared to feel constantly guilty and to constantly feel like you can never get it right because you're either working too little or working too much.
Innovation and management does not always go hand in hand, but if you realize this, it will be easier to cope with your superiors.
So creativity and innovation, the challenge is to find that undiscovered place where these words aren't simply slogans.
The IMIM program will be a life-changing experience, but do not let it change your life too much, at least not a part of your life you love most. Stay focused on your family and friends, you will need their support. So do not overdo it.
And again, maybe it's beyond ECTS points and Bologna process and that.
There are no mistakes in the program. We call it room for improvement.
Okay, the faculty members will tell you the truth and nothing but the truth. But the best ones will tell you that everything they said is contradictory and will put a shadow of doubt on everything they say.
And number 10 is the last point for our freshmen. Just mumble a short sentence. I am a student. This sentence makes you instantly feel really young. But be prepared. You won't get any student discount. You are too old for that.
Okay, and finally, at the terrible risk of making it sound like the Eurovision Song Contest, which it already is with male and female and so on, we're going to salute you with a thank you from all our countries. So, grazie, hvala, mulțumesc, gracias, danke.
Thank you for your patience and the occasional smiles at the right time. Hopefully see you all here in 2 years and have fun with your program.